everyone. So, this is just a one-off stream on, obviously, it is a Monday night. I usually do not do streams on Monday nights. But I figured there would be something a bit necessary to go through today or tonight. And I'll just check how this going. But what I will be doing tonight, as the title suggests, is checking out the Trump admin's new imperialist strategy, officially titled the National Security Strategy 2025. I already took a gander through this, and there is a reason I called it an imperialist strategy. It's entirely foreign policy. This is the first national security strategy I've read from the US, so I don't know whether or not they are all like this. For all I know, they probably are. It appears they started doing these in 1991, and it's tended to have happened once a term. So we will see how this looks. But of particular importance to me is thinking about how this will impact Australia. So that will be of particular importance, but also just the broader world, what this means. Now, there are much better analyses than mine. I would go and check out Geopolitical Economy Report on here on YouTube. I've got a pretty decent analysis from a Marxist-Leninist perspective. Obviously, I'm not a Marxist-Leninist, so I will not be glazing China or the East or anything. So, but yes. So let's just get right into it. Here we go. Oops. Okay. Okay. Here we go. So, yep, we have the National Security Strategy of the United States of America, November 2025. Sealed President of the United States. Does the seal still say "E pluribus unum" all these decades later? I thought they changed the motto to "In God We Trust" or something to counter against the atheistic communists. I didn't notice that before, but that's fine. Okay. Yep, so okay, I'll just read this out like it's a reading stream, and add some commentary. My fellow Americans, over the past 9 months, we have brought our nation and the world back from the brink of catastrophe and disaster. I'm not going to try and do that. That's fucking cringe. I'm not going to try and sound like Trump. That's cringe. After 4 years of weakness, extremism, and deadly failures, my administration has moved with urgency and historic speed to restore American strength at home and abroad and bring peace and stability to our world. Weakness, extremism, weakness? Yes. Extremism? Certainly fucking not. Deadly failures? Deadly for who? Deadly for who? Exactly. Exactly. I don't know. Certainly not extremism, though. Biden was a filthy fucking centrist. If anything, he was like center right. You're the fucking extremist. Everybody knows that. No administration in history has achieved so dramatic a turnaround in so short a time. Starting on my first day in office, we restored the sovereign borders of the United States and deployed the US military to stop the invasion of our country, illegally, by the way. We got radical gender ideology and woke lunacy out of our armed forces and began strengthening our military with $1 trillion of investment. Radical, you'll notice there is a lot of that like bigoted culture war rhetoric in here. You will notice that. I feel like that goes without saying, given this is Trump we're talking about. Uh, yeah, we rebuilt our alliances and got our allies to contribute more to our common defense, including a historic commitment from NATO countries to raise defense spending from 2% to 5% of GDP. I should notice that what this is leading to is Germany remilitarizing right as neo-Nazis are about to come to power within the next, 10 years. If that. Germany is about to have literal Nazis come to power again, and you're asking them to remilitarize. I feel like it goes without saying that is going to backfire fucking hard. That is going to backfire fucking terribly. We unleashed American energy production to reclaim our independence by destroying the environment more and imposed historic tariffs to bring critical industries back home. How's that worked for you, Trumpy boy? It hasn't. In Operation Midnight Hammer, we obliterated Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity. That's a lie. That's a lie. A lie he has continued to spread. That is a lie. It did fucking nothing. I declared the drug cartels and savage foreign gangs operating in our region as foreign terrorist organizations. And I feel like that goes without saying that is why terrorism is just a subjective term at this point. Like, literally, it's like, since when is a drug cartel a terrorist organization? I thought the whole definition of terrorism was violence for political means. How the fuck is a drug cartel ever a terrorist organization? Sure, it might be like a political organization that is running drugs to fund like its activities or its legitimate activities or something, or it's illegal political activities. But just selling drugs is not terrorism. Like, and over the course of just 8 months, we settled 8 raging conflicts including between Cambodia and Thailand. Apparently, he did actually have a role in this one. Kosovo and Serbia, don't know about that one. The DRC and Rwanda, don't know about that one. Pakistan and India, apparently he had no involvement in that. They were both confused when he claimed responsibility for it. Israel and Iran, the one that Israel started. Um, Egypt and Ethiopia, Armenia and Azerbaijan, and ending the war in Gaza with all living hostages returned to their families. I haven't checked on the progress of the hostages, but ending the war, one, not a war, it's a genocide. Two, the genocide hasn't fucking stopped. Israel's definition of genocide of ceasefire is they get to stop fighting back, but we get to keep killing you. That is their definition of a ceasefire. And I'm pretty sure that that is not the definition of a ceasefire. So, but I have not checked on the stuff about the hostages. Let me actually take a look at that. Hostages. Least. Okay, all 20 living Israeli hostages held by Hamas in Gaza have been. Yeah, and meanwhile, Israel keeps attacking them. Yeah, okay. All good. At least that's not a complete lie. It's the idea that the war ended, it's genocide, is a lie. It has kept going. America is strong and respected again. Strong and respected again? Really? You're coming off just like just as much of a pariah state as Israel. Actually, not quite as much of a pariah state as Israel. Probably like you're still not coming off great for a superpower, that's for sure. Problem is that drug cartels normally commit terrorist activities. Their political means the insurance of politicians and law enforcement from stopping their operations. They bribe, kidnap, and murder officials, enforcers, or their civilian families. Since lay people within a terrorist organization and monitoring initiates still be called terrorists, therefore drug runners and drug boats are by definition terrorists. Their organization has been classified as a terrorist organization as their activity is terrorism. All you've just described is a mafia, though. And mafias are not political organizations. Like, trying to, buying out, politicians and law enforcement is not, that's, terrorism, means, it's ideological. Or it's, done with a specific political goal in mind. Not just money. If you're just killing people or, selling drugs for money, or you're, doing shit like that, that's not terrorism. That's just a mafia. Okay. I do find this funny, though. America is strong and respected again. No, you're fucking not. And because of that, we are making peace all over the world. Uh-huh. In everything we do, we are putting America first. America first or Israel first? What follows is a national security strategy to describe and build upon the extraordinary strides we have made. This document is a roadmap to ensure that America remains the greatest and most successful nation in human history and the home of freedom on earth. What a fucking joke. In the years ahead, we will continue to develop every dimension of our national strength, and we will make America safer, richer, freer, greater, and more powerful than ever before. Good luck with that one, Donnie. President Donald J. Trump, White House, November 2024. All right, there we go. Table of contents. I'll just skip that bit. Here we go. Introduction. What is American strategy? 1. How American strategy went astray. To ensure that America remains the world's strongest, richest, most powerful, and most successful country for decades to come, our country needs a coherent, focused strategy for how we interact with the world. And to get that right, all Americans need to know what exactly it is we are trying to do and why. A strategy is a concrete, realistic plan that explains the essential connection between ends and means. You're sounding like a fucking anarchist. The essential connection between ends and means. It begins from an accurate assessment of what is desired and what tools are available or can realistically be created to achieve the desired outcomes. A strategy must evaluate, sort, and prioritize. Not every country, region, issue, or cause, however worthy, can be the focus of American strategy. The purpose of foreign policy is the protection of core national interests. That is the sole focus of this strategy. American strategies since the end of the Cold War have fallen short. They have been laundry lists of wishes or desired end states, have not clearly defined what we want, but instead stated vague platitudes, and have often misguided what we should want. After the end of the Cold War, American foreign policy elites convinced themselves that permanent American domination of the entire world was in the best interests of our country. Yet the affairs of other countries are our concern only if their activities directly threaten our interests. Now, a lot of people were kind of like, a lot of like media apparently was sort of looking at this and thinking like this was like, oh, they're isolating a bit now. Um, Obviously, that's not the case, and this is not some isolationist foreign policy, certainly not. Um, it's definitely not an isolationist foreign policy. I mean, what would an isolationist foreign policy look like? Just everybody leave us alone, we'll leave everybody else alone. Is that even possible? I mean, maybe if you had like a pretty big military to defend yourself should anybody attack you, but our elites badly miscalculated America's willingness to shoulder forever global burdens to which the American people saw no connection to the national interest. They overestimated America's ability to fund simultaneously a massive welfare, regulatory, administrative state alongside a massive military, diplomatic, intelligence, and foreign aid complex. They placed hugely misguided and destructive bets on globalism and so-called free trade that hollowed out the very middle class and industrial base on which American economic and military preeminence depend. They allowed allies and partners to offload the cost of their defense onto the American people and sometimes to suck us into conflicts and controversies central to their interests but peripheral or irrelevant to our own. And they lashed American policy to a network of international institutions, some of which are driven by outright anti-Americanism, and many by a transnationalism that explicitly seeks to dissolve individual state sovereignty. What institutions is this, like the World Economic Forum? Like the conspiracy theory version of the World Economic Forum? Isolationism. Autarky, even if lesser development, no foreign imports, no foreign worker visas, no illegal immigrants. There is no such thing as an illegal person. No immigrants or only high immigrants. What do you mean high immigrants? Like educated? Because I think Australia should be educating its own people, not brain draining other countries. No foreign property owners. That tracks. No foreign wars. That definitely tracks. Uh, I don't see why, like, no foreign worker visas. No bringing people in and to the extreme. No UN or NATO participation. I mean, Australia isn't part of NATO because we're not in the North Atlantic. Yes, educated. However, there is illegal immigrants. Yes, I know that it's a legal matter. There's no bringing people in. Why? Have you just described like complete, like unilateral isolationism? I mean, there could be like different types of isolationism. Like you could have like economic isolationism in the sense of, uh, like like I feel like you could have autarky or aim for autarky. Uh, yeah, aiming for autarky and only like domestic or state ownership. Um, but I don't see how like I broadly say, I don't like the idea of turning people away, and I can also envision a scenario where a level of where a level of industrial growth in Australia may necessitate um, may necessitate immigration. Um, well, what about like diplomatic isolation? What about diplomatic isolationism? Diplomatic isolationism is just like Just like, leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. Like, I mean, that would be something like neutrality with no alliances. So I imagine that would be. Yeah, okay, I'll continue reading this. I don't want to be on this too long. Um, you need to stop your own private companies from doing business with them as well. I mean, I don't want this to take too long. Don't call me a fucking coward. Um, in sum, not only did our elites pursue a fundamentally undesirable and impossible goal, in doing so they undermined very means necessary to achieve that goal. The character of our nation upon which its power, wealth, and decency were built. I have work early in the morning. 2. President Trump's necessary welcome correction. None of this was inevitable. President Trump's first administration proved that with the right leadership making right choices, all of the above could and should have been avoided and much else achieved. He and his team successfully marshaled America's great strengths to correct course and begin ushering in a new golden age for our country. A golden age for the rich, maybe, for the top 0.1%. To continue the United States on that path is the overarching purpose of President Trump's second administration and of this document. The questions before us now are 1. What should the United States want? 2. What are our available means to get it? And 3. How can we connect ends and means into a viable national security strategy? So, 2. What should the United States want? 1. What do we want overall? First and foremost, we want the continued survival and safety of the United States as an independent, sovereign republic whose government secures the God-given natural rights of its citizens and prioritizes their well-being and interests. Right. We want to protect this country, its people, its territory, its economy, and its way of life from military attack and hostile foreign influence, whether espionage, predatory trade practices, drug and human trafficking, destructive propaganda and influence operations, cultural subversion, or any other threat to our nation. It seems like cultural rhetoric. We want full control over our borders, over our immigration system, and over transportation networks through which people come into our country, legally and illegally. We want a world in which migration is not merely orderly, but one in which sovereign countries work together to stop rather than facilitate destabilizing population flows and have full control over whom they do and do not admit. We want a resilient national infrastructure that can withstand natural disasters, resist and thwart foreign threats, and prevent or mitigate any events that might harm the American people or disrupt the American economy. No adversary or danger should be able to hold America at risk. We want to recruit, train, equip, and field the world's most powerful, lethal, and technologically advanced military to protect our interests, deter wars, and, if necessary, win them quickly and decisively with the lowest possible casualties to our forces. And we want a military in which every single service member is proud of their country, confident in their mission. Uh-huh. We want the world's most robust, credible, and modern nuclear deterrent, plus next generation missile defenses, including a golden dome for the American homeland to protect the American people, American assets overseas, and American allies. So he wants his own fucking iron dome. He's calling it a golden dome to, stroke his own cock. Does anyone watching this find it very suspicious, by the way, like the fact that Trump has basically started fitting the White House in such a way that he kind of is like, oh, this is my house now, as if, he doesn't want to leave. Um, that is a question that has to be asked. That is a question that has to be asked, whether he actually intends to leave, because if he didn't, why the fuck would he be fitting the entire place with gold and a fucking dancing hall or something? He is too old to be a long-term dictator, sure, but he can spend his retirement in there. And then, I don't know, put JD Vance in charge, and JD Vance just lets the Silicon Valley oligarchy come in and just destroy the entire country. Oh, that would be the finest example of irony. JD Vance is president, allowing the Silicon Valley techno fetishist cult to just come in and um, implement their neo-reactionary dystopia and just destroy the state. So they're building a complex beneath the ballroom or laundering money. How do you know that? Phone. How would you know that? Maybe he just wants, I don't know, maybe he's just waiting until he can, I don't know, pardon Elaine Maxwell and a bunch of his other pedophile friends. You realize Trump's a billionaire, right? And he's literally using his authority as the president to enrich himself. What do you mean that's not how that works? Oh, 'cause it's not all liquid cash. The most expensive luxury projects are genuinely $1,000 per square foot. Okay. How big is a square foot again? Wait, essentially a bunker. What the fuck are they building a bunker for? What, so they can hide when Israel fires all their nukes when they get destroyed? That wouldn't surprise me. Not in the slightest. They're like, oh, let's get ready for the Zionist liability to just nuke everybody. Yeah, I don't know. I want to keep this going. We want the world's strongest, most dynamic, most innovative, and most advanced economy. The US economy is the bedrock of the American way of life, which promises and delivers widespread and broad based prosperity, creates upward mobility, and rewards hard work. Fuck off. It has not been that way for decades. Our economy is also the bedrock of our global position and the necessary foundation of our military. We want the world's most robust industrial base. American national power depends on a strong industrial sector capable of meeting both peacetime and wartime production demands. That requires not only direct defense industrial production capacity, but also defense related production capacity. Cultivating American industrial strength must become the highest priority of national economic policy. We want the world's most robust, productive, and innovative energy sector, one capable not just of fueling American economic growth, but of being one of America's leading export industries its own right. We want to remain the world's most scientifically and technologically advanced and innovative country to build on these strengths. Bro, you're fucking conspiracy theorist secretary of health or whatever, RFK Jr. fucking suggested, oh, Tylenol gives kids autism. Like, your health sector, you put a conspiracy theorist with in charge of the healthcare sector. That's not a recipe for remaining scientifically advanced. You banned the research and development of mRNA technology, while Russia used mRNA technology to make a fucking cancer vaccine. Ah, based on what? Fucking conspiracy theory about COVID vaccines. Ah, the America's fucked. And we want to protect our intellectual property from foreign theft. The American Communist Party wishes to abolish intellectual property, which is fair. Um, hold on. On what grounds did Tylenol say that in 2017? That pregnant women should not take Tylenol? Like, on what grounds? Because I know there is a pretty typical thing regarding medications in general with respect to pregnancy. But I'm pretty sure that the specific reasons that RFK lined out for suggesting it were completely fucking bullshit. Oh, yeah, that it causes autism, which there is no connection. Like, same with like vaccines causing autism. Like, it's fucking bullshit. Like, yeah, I know there is typically suspicion regarding, a lot of like medications and stuff with pregnant women, but you know, at least be factual and not resort to autism. Um, America's pioneering spirit is a key pillar of our continued economic dominance and military superiority. It must be preserved. No, no particular reason. I don't know, but okay. We want to maintain the United States' unrivaled soft power through which we exercise positive influence throughout the world that furthers our interests. In doing so, we will be unapologetic about our country's past and present while respectful of other countries' differing religions, cultures, and governing systems. Soft power that serves America's true national interest is effective only if we believe in our country's inherent greatness and decency. Aha. Finally, we want the restoration and reinvigoration of American spiritual and cultural health, without which long-term security is possible. We want an America that cherishes its past glories and its heroes, and that looks forward to a new golden age. It's a golden age for like the top 1%. It's a new gilded age for everybody else. We want a people who are proud, happy, and optimistic that they will leave their country to the next generation better than they found it. Too bad they voted for a Bonapartist. I know I'll have somebody up my ass if I call him the F word. Um, and it's technically not exactly correct either. We want a gainfully employed citizenry with no one sitting on the sidelines who take satisfaction from knowing that their work is essential to the prosperity of our nation and to the well-being of individuals and families. This cannot be accomplished without growing numbers of strong traditional families that raise healthy children. Okay, I want to address all of this shit about the richest 1% have more wealth than the bottom 90% combined. Um, it might only be 50%, or maybe 50% is the top 0.1%, but yeah, I don't know. But there's stuff about like, you know, more childbearing. I mean, I actually find it a bit of a contradiction when these traditionalists talk about like maintaining like the isolated nuclear family unit while complaining about dropping birth rates when the typical nuclear family in like modern America can hardly afford to get by. And to some extent, like the same is true here. Like let's say we get like let's say the climate change problem is sorted out. Because obviously the nihilism that produces is another reason that people aren't having children. That a lot of young people aren't having children. A a sort of nihilism that is emerging from climate change and complete inaction on it. But even if we live within a system, like my proposal, if someone if someone like wants to like or if someone wants like their community to have more children, or heck, let's take let's take like an argument for the sake of argument. Let's say that a white, let's say, oh, we want more white babies. Like, let's just take that argument. I don't agree with it because I'm not a racist. Um, However, if you're going to do that, why would you stick with the nuclear family? Why not go with, I don't know, like a more communitarian form of family? Because if you go with a communitarian form of the family, then you can start pumping out babies and your whole thing just, and the child rearing works on the principle of like it takes a village to raise a child, quite literally. And that feels like it would be a whole lot more successful than a nuclear family, especially if there is far more of a community social net there. The children are likely to just have a better time. Uh, what Malcolm X said that white people should only have white grandkids and black people should only have black grandkids. Is Malcolm X a white supremacist? Where the fuck did he say that? Malcolm X was a commie. Where the hell did he say that? Malcolm X was a Marxist Leninist. Where the fuck did he say that? That's insane. It was at a speech. That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, please do it. I'll take a look at it later. But yeah, I will say that regarding this, like you definitely want to have like a more communitarian form of the family. If you really want birth rates to go up, you want more community, not atomization into nuclear families. That's really the best way that you're actually going to make birth rates go up if that is what you desire. So if you want like birth rates to increase again, so that because that's a big part of the reason for mass immigration, by the way, the dropping birth rates. But I mean, a lot of people have basically sort of caught on to that one. That it is like the word has baggage, but replacement. Um, it is population replenishment. Population replenishment to maintain a steadily increasing workforce, uh, to increase productivity, to increase profits, blah, blah, blah. Um, if you want more native born citizens so that you can have feasibly have less immigration while having like a level of like continuing economic growth, you're going to ditch the nuclear family. Like, we literally do need to ditch the nuclear family. It is just not the most efficient form of the family. It would be far better to go to return to like a communitarian form of the family where, let's say, everybody on your street kind of treats each other like family. Even if it's not necessarily biological, but communitarian bonds. I mean, in the sense that like the Aborigines had. Something like that. Where, everybody is somebody's auntie and or uncle or something. Um, I don't know exactly how like Aboriginal family stuff works. Uh, but yeah. Let's continue with this. 2. What do we want in and from the world? Achieving these goals requires marshalling every resource of our national power. Yet this strategy's focus is foreign policy. What are America's core foreign policy interests? What do we want in and from the world? We want to ensure that the Western Hemisphere remains reasonably stable and well governed enough to prevent and discourage mass migration to the United States. We want a hemisphere whose governments cooperate with us against narco-terrorists, cartels, and other transnational criminal organizations. We want a hemisphere that remains free of hostile foreign incursion or ownership of key assets, and that supports critical supply chains. And we want to ensure our continued access to key strategic locations. In other words, we will assert and reinforce a Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. I'll just keep going instead of explaining everything. We want to halt and reverse the ongoing damage that foreign actors inflict on the American economy while keeping the Indo-Pacific free and open, preserving freedom of navigation in all crucial sea lanes, and maintaining secure and reliable supply chains and access to critical materials. We want to support our allies in preserving the freedom and security of Europe while restoring Europe's civilizational self-confidence and Western identity, or culture war pandering. We want to prevent an adversarial power from dominating the Middle East, its oil and gas supplies, and the choke points through which they pass, while avoiding the forever wars that bogged us down in that region at great cost. And we want to ensure that US technology and US standards, particularly in AI, biotech, and quantum computing, drive the world forward. Burn the data centers down. We are playing with fire. We are playing with fire and we are going to get burnt. These are the United States' core vital national interests. While we also have others, these are the interests we must focus on above all others and that we ignore or neglect at our peril. What are America's available means to get what we want? America retains the world's most enviable position with world-leading assets, resources, and advantages, including a still nimble political system that can course correct, says the one trying to dismantle the fucking thing. The world's single largest and most innovative economy, which both generates wealth we can invest in strategic interests and provides leverage over countries that want access to our markets. The world's leading financial system and capital markets, including the dollar's global reserve currency status, not for long. The world's most advanced, most innovative, and most profitable technology sector, which undergirds our economy, provides a qualitative edge to our military and strengthens our global influence, which also happens to be run by a techno-fetishist and techno-accelerationist death cult that wants to create computer god. As I said, burn the fucking data centers before we get burned. Before they burn us. The world's most powerful and capable military, a broad network of alliances with treaty allies and partners in the world's most strategically important regions. An enviable geography with abundant natural resources, no competing powers physically dominant in our hemisphere, borders at no risk of military invasion, and other great powers separated by vast oceans. Unmatched soft power and cultural influence, and the courage, willpower, and patriotism of the American people. In addition, through President Trump's robust domestic agenda, the United States is reinstilling a culture of competence, rooting out so-called DEI and other discriminatory and anti-competitive practices that degrade our institutions and hold us back. In other words, re-legalizing discrimination based on sex, gender, race, etc. So the opposite of what he just said. Unleashing our enormous energy production capacity as a strategic priority to fuel growth and innovation and to bolster and rebuild the middle class. Reindustrializing our economy, again to further support the middle class and control our own supply chains and production capacities. Returning economic freedom to our citizens via historic tax cuts and new regulatory efforts, making the United States the premier place to do business and invest capital, and investing in emerging technologies and basic science to ensure our continued prosperity, competitive advantage, and military dominance for future generations. Deregulatory efforts is not going to make your economy better, it is going to fucking destroy it. Certainly not going to help you rebuild the middle class. The goal of this strategy is to tie together all of these world-leading assets and others to strengthen American power and preeminence and make our country even greater than it has ever been. It was Muhammad Ali. Thought so. Malcolm X was a commie. He would not say that. The strategy. 1. Principles. President Trump's foreign policy is pragmatic without being pragmatist, realistic without being realist, principled without being idealistic, muscular without being hawkish, and restrained without being dovish or dovish. It is not grounded in traditional political ideology. It is motivated above all by what works for America, or 2 words, America first. American billionaires first. Be clear. President Trump has cemented his legacy as the president of peace. Fuck off. Anyone with a brain cell can see that that is wrong. In addition to the remarkable success achieved, the text here, oh, it's pronounced dovish, by the way, not dovish. I cannot read pronouncements. In addition to the remarkable success achieved during his first term with the historic Abraham Accords, helping Israel continue to expand their influence, why the fuck not? Just only the most dangerous country that possibly fucking exists right now. President proved his deal-making ability to secure unprecedented peace in 8 conflicts throughout the world over the course of just 8 months of his second term. We went through all of these before. Cambodia and Thailand, sure. Kosovo and Serbia, DRC and Rwanda, Pakistan and India, no involvement. Israel and Iran, Egypt and Ethiopia, Armenia and Azerbaijan. Ending the war in Gaza. It's not a war, it's a genocide, and the genocide is still going. Stopping regional conflicts before they spiral into global wars that drag down whole continents is worthy of the Commander-in-Chief's attention and a priority for this administration. A world on fire where wars come to our shores is bad for American interests. President Trump uses unconventional diplomacy, America's military might, and economic leverage to surgically extinguish embers of division between nuclear-capable nations and violent wars caused by centuries-long hatred. President Trump has proven that American foreign, defense, and intelligence policies must be driven by the following basic principles. Focused definition on the national interest, Since at least the end of the Cold War, administrations have often published national security strategies that seek to expand the definition of America's national interest such that almost no issue or endeavor is considered outside its scope, but to focus on everything is to focus on nothing. America's core national security interests shall be our focus. Peace through strength. Strength is the best deterrent. Countries or other actors sufficiently deterred from threatening American interests will not do so. In addition, strength can enable us to achieve peace, as parties that respect our strength often seek our help and are receptive to our efforts to resolve conflicts and maintain peace. Therefore, the United States must maintain the strongest economy, develop the most advanced technologies, bolster our society's cultural health, and field the world's most capable military. I will just say one thing right now. With respect to Australia, I think we should be an economic superpower in the sense that we are fully self-sufficient, or at least mostly self-sufficient, and that we don't really need to import much at all, and can instead just export. Um, do I think we should be a military superpower? No. No, not at all. Um, insofar as we should have any military at all, it should be an armed populace. And in other words, an armed body of people, and a strictly defensive posture. No intervention ever. Speaking of non-intervention, predisposition to non-interventionism. In the Declaration of Independence, America's founders laid down a clear preference for non-interventionism in the affairs of other nations and made clear the basis. Just as all human beings possess God-given equal natural rights, all nations are entitled by the laws of nature and nature's God to a separate and equal station with respect to one another. For a country whose interests are as numerous and diverse as ours, rigid adherence to non-interventionism is not possible. Yet this predisposition should set a high bar for what constitutes a justified intervention. America has been like one of the most warlike countries, I should say that, or in recent history. Flexible realism. US policy will be realistic about what is possible and desirable to seek in its dealings with other nations. We seek good relations and peaceful commercial relations with the nations of the world without imposing on them democratic or other social change that differs widely from their traditions and histories. We recognize and affirm that there is nothing inconsistent or hypocritical in acting according to such a realistic assessment or in maintaining good relations with countries whose governing systems and societies differ from ours, even as we push like-minded friends to uphold our shared norms, furthering our interests as we do so. Primacy of nations. The world's fundamental political unit is and will remain the nation-state. It is natural and just that all nations put their interests first and guard their sovereignty. The world works best when nations prioritize their interests. In the past, that's just led to bloody wars, though. The United States will put our own interests first, and in our relations with other nations, encourage them to prioritize their own interests as well. We stand for the sovereign rights of nations against the sovereignty-sapping incursions of the most intrusive transnational organizations, and for reforming those institutions so that they assist rather than hinder individual sovereignty and further American interests. Sovereignty and respect. The United States will unapologetically protect our own sovereignty. This includes preventing its erosion by transnational and international organizations, attempts by foreign powers or entities to censor our discourse or curtail our citizens' free speech rights. You mean the shit you've been fucking doing? Uh-huh. So it's okay for you to do it. But if another country does, that's wow. Kind of hypocritical. Lobbying and influence operations that seek to steer our policies or involve us in foreign conflicts. Hey, back. Sorry, what was that? And the cynical manipulation of our immigration system to build up voting blocs loyal to foreign interests within our country. It's such a stupid. The United States will chart our own course in the world and determine our own destiny free of outside interference. Balance of power. The United States cannot allow any nation to become so dominant that it could threaten our interests. We will work with allies and partners to maintain global and regional balance of power to prevent the emergence of dominant adversaries. As the United States rejects the ill-fated concept of global domination for itself, we must prevent the global and in some cases even regional domination of others. This does not mean wasting blood and treasure to curtail the influence of all the world's great and little powers. The outside influence of larger, richer, and stronger nations is a timeless truth of international relations. This reality sometimes entails working with partners to thwart ambitions that threaten our joint interests. Pro-American worker. American policy will be pro-worker, not merely pro-growth, and it will prioritize our own workers. We must rebuild an economy in which prosperity is broadly based and widely shared, not concentrated at the top or localized in certain industries or a few parts of our country. That would be great if it was actually true, but it's pretty evidently not, since working class Americans have had an even worse time. But fairness. From military alliances to trade relations and beyond, the United States will insist on being treated fairly by other countries. We will no longer tolerate and can no longer afford free-riding trade imbalances, predatory economic practices, and other impositions on our nation's historic goodwill that disadvantage our interests. As we want our allies to be rich and capable, so must our allies see that it is in their interest that the United States also remain rich and capable. In particular, we expect our allies to spend far more of their national gross domestic product, GDP, on their own defense to start to make up for the enormous imbalances accrued over decades of much greater spending by the United States. We'll not keel the knee any longer, Trump. Competence and merit. American prosperity and security depend on the development and promotion of competence. Competence and merit are among our greatest civilizational advantages. Where the best Americans are hired, promoted, and honored, innovation and prosperity follow. Should competence be destroyed or systematically discouraged, complex systems that we take for granted, from infrastructure to national security to education and research, will cease to function. Should merit be smothered, America's historic advantages in science, technology, industry, defense, and innovation will evaporate. The success of radical ideologies that seek to replace competence and merit with favored group status would render America unrecognizable and unable to defend itself. DEI. At the same time, we cannot allow meritocracy to be used as a justification to open America's labor market to the world in the name of finding global talent that undercuts American workers. In our every principle and action, America and Americans must always come first. Oh, okay. Okay. I should say, because I'm not sure if this thing I just cut out as I said it, I do broadly agree in principle with the idea that, like, a country should focus on, well, yeah, Americans must always come first. So, I mean, I do, in a sense, um, as a matter of principle, agree with the logic that a country should focus on its own workers before others. Um, However, obviously, all of this language about meritocracy is fucking bullshit. Um, America is not a meritocracy; it's an oligarchy. Um, and obviously, more of that cultural rhetoric, like radical ideologies. Um, yeah, more of that bullshit. Two, priorities. The era of mass migration is over. Who a country admits into its borders, in what numbers, and from where, will inevitably define the future of that nation. Any country that considers itself sovereign has the right and duty to define its future. Throughout history, sovereign nations prohibited uncontrolled migration and granted citizenship only rarely to foreigners who also had to meet demanding criteria. The West's experience over the past decades vindicates this enduring wisdom. In countries throughout the world, mass migration has strained domestic resources, increased violence and other crime, weakened social cohesion, distorted labor markets, and undermined national security. The era of mass migration must end. Border security is the primary element of national security. We must protect our country from invasion. Invasion. There's fucking talk. It's fascistic. Not just from unchecked migration, but from cross border threats such as terrorism, drugs, espionage, and human trafficking. A border controlled by the will of the American people as implemented by their government is fundamental to the survival of the United States as a sovereign republic. Protection of core rights and liberties. The purpose of the American government is to secure the God given natural rights of American citizens. To this end, departments and agencies of the United States government have been granted fearsome powers. Those powers must never be abused, whether under the guise of de radicalization, protecting our democracy, or any other pretext. When and where those powers are abused, abusers must be held accountable. Trump. In particular, the rights of free speech, which you have infringed, freedom of religion, which you have infringed, and of conscience, and the right to choose and steer our common government are core rights that must never be infringed. Regarding countries that share or say they share these principles, the United States will advocate strongly that they be upheld in letter and spirit. We will oppose elite-driven, anti-democratic restrictions on core liberties in Europe, the Anglosphere, and the rest of the democratic world, especially among our allies. Then stop fucking doing it yourself! The sheer fucking hypocrisy. I swear the man's a pathological liar. Although I don't even think he's the one writing this shit. Fucking talking points. Burden sharing and burden shifting. The days of the United States propping up the entire world order like Atlas are over. We count among our many allies and partners dozens of wealthy, sophisticated nations that must assume primary responsibility for their regions and contribute far more to our collective defense. President Trump has set a new global standard with the Hague Commitment, which pledges NATO countries to spend 5% of its GDP on defense, and which our NATO allies have endorsed and must now meet. Continuing President Trump's approach of asking allies to assume primary responsibility for their regions, the United States will organize a burden-sharing network with our government as convener and supporter. This approach ensures that burdens are shared and that all such efforts benefit from broader legitimacy. The model will be targeted partnerships that use economic tools to align incentives, share burdens with like-minded allies, and insist on reforms that anchor long-term stability. This strategic clarity will allow the United States to counter hostile and subversive influences efficiently while avoiding the overextension and diffuse focus that undermined past efforts. The United States will stand ready to help, potentially through more favorable treatment on commercial matters, technology sharing, and defense procurement, those countries that willingly take more responsibility for security in their neighborhoods and align their export controls with ours. Realignment through peace. Seeking peace deals at the president's direction, even in regions and countries peripheral to our immediate core interests, is an effective way to increase stability, strengthen America's global influence, realign countries and regions toward our interests, and open markets. The resources required boil down to presidential diplomacy, which our great nation can embrace only with competent leadership, which Trump is certainly not, the dividends, an end to long-standing conflicts, lives saved, new friends made, can vastly outweigh the relatively minor costs of time and attention. Economic security. Finally, because economic security is fundamental to national security, we will work to further strengthen the American economy with emphasis on balanced trade. The United States will prioritize rebalancing our trade relations, reducing trade deficits, opposing barriers to our exports, and ending dumping and other anti-competitive practices that hurt American industries and workers. We seek fair, reciprocal trade deals with nations that want to trade with us on a basis of mutual benefit and respect. But our priorities must and will be our own workers, our own industries, and our own national security. Well, I would say the same thing for Australia. Let's completely decouple, forge our own industry, take control of our own materials, and work towards autarky. That way we don't need to trade with anybody. Pipe dream? No. Difficulty? Very difficult. Yeah. Securing access to critical supply chains and materials. As Alexander Hamilton argued in our Republic's earliest days, the United States must never be dependent on any outside power for core components, from raw materials to parts to finished products, necessary to the nation's defense or economy. We must re-secure our own independent and reliable access to the goods we need to defend ourselves and preserve our way of life. This will require expanding American access to critical minerals and materials while countering predatory economic practices. I'm assuming that's what that shit was about when Albanese went and sold us out. When Albanese went to the White House and shook Trump's hand selling like rare earths, sell rare earths to America. Why? These are materials that we could use for our own industry. And he sold us out. Like, so much for labor being pro worker in theory, not in practice. Moreover, the intelligence community will monitor key supply chains and technological advances around the world to ensure we understand and mitigate vulnerabilities and threats to American security and prosperity. Reindustrialization. The future belongs to makers. The United States will reindustrialize its economy, reshore industrial production, and encourage and attract investment in our economy and our workforce with a focus on the critical and emerging technology sectors that will define the future. We will do so through the strategic use of tariffs and new technologies that favor widespread industrial production in every corner of our nation, raise living standards for American workers, and ensure that our country is never again reliant on any adversary, present or potential, for critical products or components. Strategic use of tariffs. Trump has been economically illiterate about his tariffs. Okay. Reviving our defense industrial base. A strong, capable military cannot exist without a strong, capable defense industrial base. The huge gap demonstrated in recent conflicts between low-cost drones and missiles versus the expensive systems required to defend against them has laid bare our need to change and adapt. America requires a national mobilization to innovate powerful defenses at low cost, to produce the most capable and modern systems and munitions at scale, and to reshore our defense industrial supply chains. In particular, we must provide our war fighters. Who wrote this? Did Hegseth write this? Who wrote this? With the full range of capabilities, ranging from low-cost weapons that can defeat most adversaries up to the most capable high-end systems necessary for a conflict with a sophisticated enemy. And to realize President Trump's vision of peace through strength, we must do so quickly. We will also encourage the revitalization of the industrial bases of all our allies and partners to strengthen collective defense. Energy dominance. Restoring American energy dominance in oil, gas, coal, and nuclear, and restoring the necessary key energy components top strategic priority. Cheap and abundant energy will produce well-paying jobs in the United States, reduce costs for American consumers and businesses, fuel reindustrialization, help maintain our advantage in cutting-edge technologies such as AI. Expanding our net energy exports will also deepen relationships with allies while curtailing the influence of adversaries, protect our ability to defend our shores, and, when and where necessary, enables us to project power. We reject the disastrous climate change and net zero ideologies that have so greatly harmed Europe, threaten the United States, and subsidize our adversaries. So you would rather watch the world burn Got it. Preserving and growing America's financial sector dominance. The United States boasts the world's leading financial and capital markets, which are pillars of American influence that afford policymakers significant leverage and tools to advance America's national security priorities. But our leadership position cannot be taken for granted. Preserving and growing our dominance entails leveraging our dynamic free market system and our leadership in digital finance and innovation to ensure that our markets continue to be the most dynamic, liquid, and secure and remain the envy. 3. The regions. This is where we get to the real stuff. It has become customary for documents such as this to mention every part of the world and issue on the assumption that any oversight signifies a blind spot or a snub. As a result, such documents become bloated and unfocused, the opposite of what a strategy should be. To focus and prioritize is to choose, to acknowledge that not everything matters equally to everyone. It is not to assert that any peoples, regions, or countries are somehow intrinsically unimportant. The United States is by every measure the most generous nation in history. Yet we cannot afford to be equally attentive to every region and every problem in the world. The purpose of national security policy is the protection of core national interests. Some priorities transcend regional confines. For instance, terrorist activity in an otherwise less consequential area might force our urgent attention, but leaping from that necessity to sustained attention to the periphery is a mistake. A. So these are listed in order of importance. A. Western Hemisphere. The Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. After years of neglect, the United States will reassert and enforce the Monroe Doctrine to restore American preeminence in the Western Hemisphere and to protect our homeland and our access to key geographies throughout the region. We will deny non-hemispheric competitors the ability to position forces or other threatening capabilities or to own and control or patrol strategically vital assets in our hemisphere. This Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine is a common sense and potent restoration of American power and priorities consistent with American security interests. Our goals for the Western Hemisphere can be summarized as enlist and expand. We will enlist established friends in the hemisphere to control migration, stop drug flows, and strengthen stability and security on land and sea. We will expand by cultivating and strengthening new partners while bolstering our own nation's appeal as the hemisphere's economic and security partner of choice. Enlist. American policy should focus on enlisting regional champions and who want to work with us. The United States must consider a military presence in the Western Hemisphere. This means four obvious things. A readjustment of our global military presence to address urgent threats in our hemisphere, especially the missions identified in this strategy, and away from theaters whose relative import to American national security has declined in recent decades or years. A more suitable Coast Guard and Navy presence to control sea lanes, to thwart illegal and other unwanted migration, to reduce human and drug trafficking, and to control key transit routes in a crisis. Targeted deployments to secure the border and defeat cartels, including when necessary the use of lethal force to replace the failed law enforcement only strategy of the last several decades, and establishing or expanding access to strategically important locations. The United States prioritized commercial diplomacy to strengthen our own economy and interests, using tariffs and reciprocal trade agreements as powerful tools. The goal is for our partner nations to build up their domestic economies while an economically stronger and more sophisticated Western Hemisphere becomes an increasingly attractive market for American commerce and investment. Strengthening critical supply chains in this hemisphere will reduce dependencies and increase American economic resilience. The linkages created between America and our partners will benefit both sides while making it harder for non-hemispheric competitors to increase their influence in the region. And even as we prioritize commercial diplomacy, we will work to strengthen our security partnerships, from weapons sales to intelligence sharing to joint exercises. We expand as we deepen our partnerships with countries with whom America presently has strong relations. We must look to expand our network in the region. We want other nations to see us as their partner of first choice, and we will, through various means, discourage their collaboration with others. I think this is talking about, like, because I think it's pretty clear, like, consequence of this, like, re-establishment of the Monroe Doctrine is going to be that they genuinely do go back to, like, overthrowing, like, they seem like they're about to try and overthrow the Venezuelan government. And they've indicated, and it's been indicated that after that, the logical next step is Nicaragua and Cuba. So that's shit, but, um, the Western Hemisphere is home to many strategic resources that America should partner with regional allies to develop to make neighboring countries as well as our own more prosperous. The National Security Council will immediately begin a robust interagency process to task agencies supported by our intelligence community's analytical arm to identify strategic points and resources in the Western Hemisphere that they view to their protection and joint development with regional partners. Non-hemispheric competitors have made major inroads into our hemisphere, both to disadvantage us economically at the present and in ways that may harm us strategically in the future. Allowing these incursions without serious pushback is another great American strategic mistake of recent decades. The United States must be preeminent in the Western Hemisphere as a condition of our security and prosperity, a condition that allows us to assert ourselves confidently where and when we need to in the region. In terms of our alliances and the terms upon which we provide any kind of aid must be contingent on winding down adversarial outside influence, from control of military installations, ports, and the infrastructure to the purchase of strategic assets broadly defined. Some foreign influence will be hard to reverse given the political alignment between certain Latin American governments and certain foreign actors. However, many governments are not ideologically aligned with foreign powers, but are instead attracted to doing business with them for other reasons, including low costs and fewer regulatory hurdles. The United States has achieved success in rolling back outside influence in the Western Hemisphere by demonstrating its specificity how many hidden costs in espionage, cybersecurity, debt traps, and other ways are embedded in allegedly low-cost foreign assistance. We should accelerate these efforts, including by utilizing US leverage in finance and technology to induce countries to reject such assistance. That sounds like coercion. In the Western Hemisphere and everywhere in the world, the United States should make clear that American goods, services, and technologies are a far better buy in the long run because they are higher quality and do not come with the same kind of strings as other countries' systems. Bullshit. That said, we will reform our own system to expedite approvals and licensing, again, to make ourselves the party of first choice. The choice all countries should face is whether they want to live in an American-led world of sovereign countries and free economies, or in a parallel one in which they are influenced by countries on the other side of the world. Every accusation is an admission. Every US official working in or on the region must be up to speed on the full picture of detrimental outside influence, while simultaneously applying pressure and offering incentives to partner countries to protect our hemisphere. Successfully protecting our hemisphere also requires closer collaboration between the US government and the American private sector. Sounds like fascism. All our embassies must be aware of major business opportunities in their country, especially major government contracts. Every US government official that interacts with these countries should understand that part of their job is to help American companies succeed. The US government will identify strategic acquisition and investment opportunities for American companies in the region and present these opportunities for assessment by every US government financing program, including but not limited to those in the Departments of State, War and Energy, the Small Business Administration, the International Development Finance Corporation, the Export-Import Bank, and the Millennium Challenge Corporation. We should also partner with regional governments and businesses to build scalable and resilient energy infrastructure, invest in critical mineral access in the hardened existing and future cyber communications networks, take full advantage of American encryption and security potential. The aforementioned US government entities should be used to finance some of the costs of purchasing US goods abroad. The United States must also resist and reverse measures such as targeted taxation, unfair regulation, and expropriation that disadvantage US businesses. The terms of our agreements, especially with those countries that depend on us most, and therefore over which we have the most leverage, must be sole source contracts for our companies. At the same time, we should make every effort to push out foreign companies that build infrastructure in the region. Okay? B. Asia. Win the economic future, prevent military confrontation. Leading from a position of strength. President Trump single-handedly reversed for 3 decades of mistaken American assumptions about China. Namely, that by opening our markets to China, encouraging American business to invest in China, and outsourcing our manufacturing to China, we would facilitate China's entry into the so-called rules-based international order. This did not happen. China got rich and powerful and used its wealth and power to its considerable advantage. American elites, over 4 successive administrations, both political parties, were either willing enablers of China's strategy or in denial. The Indo-Pacific is already the source of almost half the world's GDP based on gross power parity, and 1/3 based on nominal GDP. That share is certain to grow over the 21st century, which means that the Indo-Pacific is already and will continue to be among the next century's key economic and geopolitical battlegrounds. To thrive at home, we must successfully compete there, and we are. President Trump signed major agreements during his October 2025 travels that further deepen our powerful ties in commerce, culture, technology, and defense, and reaffirm our commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific. America retains tremendous assets, the world's strongest economy and military, unrivaled soft power, and a historic record of benefiting our allies and partners. Sure. That enable us to compete successfully. President Trump is building alliances and strengthening partnerships in the Indo-Pacific that will be the bedrock of security, prosperity, in the future. Economics, the ultimate stakes. Since the Chinese economy reopened to the world in 1979, commercial relations between our two countries have been and remained fundamentally unbalanced. What began as a relationship between a mature, wealthy economy and one of the world's poorest countries has transformed into one between near peers, even as, until very recently, America's posture remained rooted in those past assumptions. China adapted to the shift in US tariff policy that began in 2017, in part by strengthening its hold on supply chains, especially in the world's low and middle income, i.e., per capita GDP 13,800 or less countries, among the greatest economic battlegrounds of the coming decades. China's exports to low-income countries doubled between 2020 and 2024. The United States imports Chinese goods directly from middlemen or indirectly from middlemen and Chinese-built factories in a dozen countries, including Mexico. China's exports to low-income countries are today nearly 4 times its exports to the United States. When President Trump first took office in 2017, China's exports to the United States stood at 4% of its GDP, but have since fallen to slightly over 2% of its GDP. China continues, however, to export to the United States other proxy countries. Going forward, we will rebalance America's economic relationship with China, prioritizing reciprocity and fairness to restore American economic independence. Trade with China should be balanced and focused on non-sensitive factors. If America remains on a growth path, and we can sustain that while maintaining a genuinely mutually advantageous economic relationship with Beijing, we should be headed from our present $30 trillion economy 5 to $30 to $40 trillion in 30s. It's cutting out. I can't see it cutting out. And I've got you sure it's not an issue on your end? Because my stats here are fine in terms of connection. I got full bars. Can you hear me okay? Um, well, how does it sound now? Because I shouldn't be having any issues. I'm on full bars. Okay. Yeah. Uh, uh, okay, so if America remains on a growth path, can sustain that while maintaining a genuinely mutually advantageous economic relationship with Beijing, we should be headed from our present $30 trillion economy in 2025 to $40 trillion in the 2030s, putting our country in an enviable position to maintain our status as the world's leading economy. Our ultimate goal is to lay the foundation for long-term economic vitality. Importantly, this must be accompanied by a robust and ongoing focus on deterrence to prevent war in the Indo-Pacific. This combined approach can become a virtuous cycle as strong as strong American deterrence opens up space for more disciplined economic action, while more disciplined economic action leads to greater American resources to sustain deterrence in the long term. To accomplish this, several things are essential. First, the United States must protect and defend our economy and our people from harm from any country or source. This means ending, among other things, predatory state-directed subsidies and industrial strategies, unfair trading practices, job destruction and deindustrialization, grand-scale intellectual property theft and industrial espionage, threats against our supply chains. Must work with our treaty allies and partners who together add another $35 trillion in economic power to our own $30 trillion national economy, together constituting more than half the world economy, to counteract predatory economic practices and use our combined economic power to help safeguard our prime position in the world economy and ensure that allied economies do not become subordinate to any competing power. So you want us to remain subordinate to you. We must continue to improve commercial and other relations with India to encourage New Delhi to contribute to Indo-Pacific security, including through continued quadrilateral cooperation with Australia, Japan, and the United States, the Quad. Moreover, we will also work to align the actions of our allies and partners with our joint interest, preventing domination by any single competitor nation. Fuck off. I am an Australian. Don't want any part in this shit, and neither should anyone. We are being teed like it's a peaceful coexistence. That's not how this works. That's not ever how this works. We are being teed up for war. We are being teed up by both parties. To be clear, both parties. And I can tell you with certainty that neither the Greens or One Nation or any of the others will really do anything about it. If they're in power, they will keep doing the exact same shit because they have to. We are being teed up to have our young men sent to die in trenches again. And I, for one, will not have it, and neither should anybody else. Now, I said this once on Twitter, and, perhaps I should find it if I can. Let's find this shit. Okay. I will read a Twitter post here. So I was responding to a supposedly doctored quote from Senator Marine Faruqi. I said, okay, now, a lot of Australians opposed sending young men to die in a war that we frankly had no need to involve ourselves in, right? World War One wasn't like World War Two where we were attacked and defended ourselves. World War One was pretty much entirely a European war. We had no stake in the matter. Our involvement was all about defending the mother country, i.e., Britain. That's why Jack Lang was so opposed to involvement in the war and to paying off debt accrued to Britain after the war. The Anzacs who went to die in World War One were not sent to defend us because we had no stake in it. They were sent to die for Britain. Young Australian men sent to die for another country. So while I disagree with the way it's been put at times similar to this, it's certainly not the best thing to be fetishizing the Anzacs in World War One year after year. Those young men who died weren't heroes, they were victims, sent like lambs to the slaughter to be sacrificed for nothing. The same applies to every soldier who died fighting in American imperialist wars in Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Iraq. And more importantly, they're about to do it again. Not the British Empire, but its successor, the Anglo-American Empire. Pretending China poses some threat to us in order to manufacture consent to send more of our young men to die in another selfish, for-profit war for America that they won't even win in the first place. More young Australian men are being lined up to be sent like lambs to the slaughter to die for nothing. And I finished with two words. Never again. Now, there are people in this, there are people in Australia who might think that I am being disrespectful by claiming that they are victims rather than heroes. And I don't see how that is disrespectful. I don't see how it is I don't see how it should be considered disrespectful to tell a hard truth that people need to know, that people need to understand. Especially when the shit is happening again. It's happening again. It may take time, but it will happen again. My generation will be alive to see it. Depending when it starts, it may be my generation that is sent. And I sure as hell will not go if they try to drop. I say that now. I will not go because I will not fight another war for America. Not a fucking chance. And that really is and it really does just need to be said. And I think Australians need to understand that. And one might say, oh, that China is a threat. Insofar as they are, insofar as China is threatening us, they are threatening us because we are siding with America, who is being openly aggressive towards them. Who are using openly aggressive rhetoric. How, if we were neutral, nothing would be happening right now. I guarantee it. We would not have, China would be doing nothing to us. Would be leaving us the fuck alone if we were not continuing to side with a collapsing empire that is openly aggressive towards them. Rhetorically. Perhaps not militarily just yet. But it'll get there. Shit. The United States must at the same time invest in research to preserve and advance our advantage, cutting-edge military and dual-use technology, emphasis on the domains where US advantages are strongest. These include undersea, space, and nuclear, as well as others that will decide the future of military power, such as AI, quantum computing, autonomous systems, plus the energy necessary to fuel these planes. Additionally, the US government's critical relationships with the American private sector help maintain surveillance of persistent threats to US networks and critical infrastructure. This in turn enables the US government's ability to conduct real-time discovery, attribution, and response, i.e. network defense and offensive cyber operations, while protecting the competitiveness of the US economy and bolstering the resilience of the American technology sector. Again, this is a sector which is being run by a techno-fetishist cult. Improving these capabilities will also require considerable deregulation to further improve our competitiveness, spur innovation, increase access to America's natural resources. In doing so, we should aim to restore a military balance favorable to the United States and their allies in the region. You are giving more deregulation, more power to a techno-fetishist cult that is trying to create God. It's trying to create God using ones and zeros. I do not see how this is something that should be fucking endorsed. I used to. I don't anymore. Because I've seen it. It's fucking dangerous. The data centers need to be destroyed. AI needs to be completely fucking done away with. Forever. In addition to maintaining economic preeminence and consolidating our alliance system into an economic group, the United States must execute robust diplomatic and private sector-led economic engagement in those countries where the majority of global economic growth is likely to occur over the coming decades. America First diplomacy seeks to rebalance global trade relationships. We have made clear to our allies that America's current account deficit is unsustainable. We must encourage Europe, Japan, Korea, Australia, Canada, Mexico, and other prominent nations in adopting trade policies that help rebalance China's economy toward household consumption, because Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Middle East cannot alone absorb China's enormous excess capacity. The exporting nations of Europe and Asia can also look to middle-income countries as a limited but growing market for their exports. I should point out something else as well. For those who think that China is more of a threat to us than America is, I will say two things. China is not the one with multiple military bases on our soil, including an intelligence base which spies on us. And also, China has not couped our government from within for trying to shut said surveillance base down. I cannot make this clear enough that America is 10 times the threat to this country than China has ever been, or unlikely will ever be. China is no threat to us unless we continue to work with the collapsing empire that is being openly antagonistic towards them. I am not pro-China, to be clear. We need to focus on ourselves, and I want to make a distinction here because it needs to be made. I am not Australia first. I am Australian workers first. Because I understand things through the lens of class, and the interests of Australian workers is distinct to the interests of Australia, the nation state. The interests of the nation state is equivalent to the interests of the rich, not the workers. I stand for Australian workers, not rich mining oligarchs like fucking Gina Reinhardt and Guy Farmer, or, fucking banks, or any of that shit. I stand for workers, not businesses. So I want to make that clear now. So I am not Australia first, I am Australian workers first. A distinction that has to be made. Let's continue. China's state-led and state-backed companies excel in building physical and digital infrastructure. China has recycled perhaps $1.3 trillion of its trade surpluses into loans to its trading partners. America and its allies have not yet formulated, much less executed, a joint plan for the so-called Global South, but together possess tremendous resources. Europe, Japan, South Korea, and others hold net foreign assets of $7 trillion. International financial institutions, including the multilateral development banks, possess combined assets of $1.5 trillion. While mission creep has undermined some of these institutions' effectiveness, this administration is dedicated to using its leadership position to implement reforms that ensure they serve American interests. What differentiates America from the rest of the world? Our openness, transparency, trustworthiness, commitment to freedom and innovation and free market capitalism will continue to make us the global partner of first choice. America still holds the dominant position in the key technologies that the world needs. We should present partners with a suite of inducements, for instance, high-tech cooperation, defense purchases, and access to our capital markets that tip decisions in our favor. President Trump's May 2025 state visits to Persian Gulf countries demonstrated the power and appeal of American technology. There, the president won the Gulf states' support for America's superior AI technology, deepening our partnerships. America should similarly enlist our European and Asian allies and partners, including India, to cement and improve our joint positions in the Western Hemisphere and with regard to critical minerals in Africa. We should form coalitions that use our comparative advantages in finance and technology to build export markets with cooperating countries. America's economic partners should no longer expect to earn income from the United States through overcapacity and structural imbalances, but instead pursue growth through managed cooperation tied to strategic alignment by receiving long-term US investment. With the world's deepest and most efficient capital markets, America can help low-income countries develop their own capital markets and bind their currencies more closely to the dollar, ensuring the dollar's future as the world's reserve currency. This is a system of economic imperialism. Our greatest advantages remain our system of government and dynamic free market economy. Yet we cannot assume that our system's advantages will fail by default. A national security strategy is, therefore, essential. Deterring military threats. In the long term, maintaining American economic and technological preeminence is the surest way to deter and prevent a large-scale military conflict, and you are doing so by putting a techno-fetishist death cult in charge. I repeat, a techno-fetishist death cult. A favorable conventional military balance remains an essential component of strategic competition. There is rightly much focus on Taiwan, partly because of Taiwan's dominance of semiconductor production, but mostly because Taiwan provides direct access to the second island chain and splits Northeast and Southeast Asia into two distinct theaters. Given that 1/3 of global shipping passes annually through the South China Sea, this has major implications for the US economy. Hence, deterring a conflict over Taiwan, ideally by preserving military overmatch, is a priority. We will also maintain our long-standing declaratory policy on Taiwan, meaning that the United States does not support any unilateral change to the status quo in the Taiwan Strait. We will build a military capable of denying aggression anywhere in the first island chain. But the American military cannot and should not have to do this alone. Our allies must step up and spend, and more important, do much more for collective defense. America's diplomatic efforts should focus on pressing our first island chain allies and partners to allow the US military greater access to their ports and other facilities, to spend more on their own defense, and most importantly, to invest in capabilities aimed at deterring aggression. This will interlink maritime security issues along the first island chain, while reinforcing US and allies' capacity to deny any attempt to seize Taiwan or achieve a balance of forces so unfavorable to us as to make defending that island possible. A related security challenge potential for any competitor to control the South China Sea. This could allow a potentially hostile power to impose a toll system of one of the world's most vital lanes of commerce, or worse, to close and reopen it at will. Either of those two outcomes would be harmful to the US economy and broader US interests. Strong measures must be developed along with the deterrence necessary to keep those lanes open, free of tolls, and not subject to arbitrary closure by one country. This will require not just further investment in our military, especially naval capabilities, but also strong cooperation with every nation that stands to suffer, from India to Japan and beyond, if this problem be not addressed. Given President Trump's insistence on increased burden sharing from Japan and South Korea, we must urge these countries to increase defense spending with a focus on the capabilities, including new capabilities, necessary to deter adversaries and protect the first chain. We will also harden and strengthen our military presence in the Western Pacific, while in our dealings with Taiwan and Australia, we maintain our determined rhetoric and increase defense spending. Stop telling us what the fuck to do. Get your bases and fuck off. Preventing conflict requires a vigilant posture in the Indo-Pacific, a renewed defense industrial base, greater military investment from ourselves and from allies and partners, and winning the economic and technological competition over the long term. That was a long section. C. A lot of fucking cultural crap here. Promoting European greatness. American officials become used to thinking about European problems in terms of insufficient military spending and economic stagnation. There is truth to this, but Europe's real problems are even deeper. Continental Europe has been losing share of global GDP, down from 25% in 1990 to 14% today, partly owing to national and transnational regulations that undermine creativity and industriousness. But this economic decline is eclipsed by the real and more stark prospect of civilizational erasure. Cultural. The larger issues facing Europe include activities of the European Union and other transnational bodies that undermine political liberty and sovereignty, migration policies that are transforming the continent and creating strife, censorship of free speech, and suppression of political opposition. I know someone else has been doing that. Oh, Trump. Cratering birth rates, there are ways to solve that don't. Yeah. And loss of national identities and self-confidence. Should present trends continue, the continent will be unrecognizable in 20 years or less. As such, it is far from obvious whether certain European countries will have economies and military strong enough to remain reliable allies. Many of these nations are currently doubling down on their present path. We want Europe to remain European, to regain its civilizational self-confidence, and to abandon its failed focus on regulatory suffocation. This lack of self-confidence is most evident in Europe's relationship with Russia. European allies enjoy a significant hard power advantage over Russia by almost every measure save nuclear weapons. As a result of Russia's war in Ukraine, European relations with Russia are now deeply attenuated, and many Europeans regard Russia as an existential threat. Managing European relations with Russia will require significant US diplomatic engagement, both to re-establish conditions of strategic stability across the Eurasian landmass, to mitigate the risk of conflict between Russia and European states. It is a core interest of the United States to negotiate an expeditious cessation of hostilities in Ukraine in order to stabilize European economies, prevent unintended escalation or expansion of the war, and re-establish strategic stability with Russia, as well as to enable the post-hostilities reconstruction of Ukraine to enable its survival as a viable state. The Ukraine war has had the adverse effect of increasing Europe's, especially Germany's, external dependencies. Today, German chemical companies are building some of the world's largest processing plants in China using Russian gas that they cannot obtain at home. The Trump administration finds itself at odds with European officials who hold unrealistic expectations for the war, perched in unstable minority governments, many of which trample on basic principles of democracy to suppress opposition. So do you. A large European majority wants peace, yet that desire is not translated into policy in large measure because of those governments' subversion of democratic processes. This is strategically important to the United States precisely because European states cannot reform themselves if they are trapped in political crisis. Yet Europe remains strategically and culturally vital to the United States. Transatlantic trade remains one of the pillars of the global economy and of American prosperity. European sectors, from manufacturing to technology to energy, remain among the world's most robust. Europe is home to cutting-edge scientific research and world-leading cultural institutions. Not only can we not afford to write Europe off, doing so would be self-defeating for what this strategy aims to achieve. American diplomacy should continue to stand up for genuine democracy, hypocrites, freedom of expression, hypocrites, and unapologetic celebrations of European nations' individual character, history, or whatever. America encourages its political allies in Europe to promote its revival of spirit and the growing influence of patriotic European parties and key cause for great optimism. Are you talking about the fascists? How about the neo-Nazis in Germany? Yeah. I'm sorry. You can revive a form of national spirit without becoming a racist fucking pariah state. And being cruel unnecessarily to millions of people. Like what you've been doing. Our goal should be to help Europe correct its current trajectory. We will need a strong Europe to help us successfully compete, to work in concert with us to prevent any adversary from dominating Europe. America is understandably sentimentally attached to the European continent and, of course, to Britain and Ireland. The character of these countries is also strategically important because we count upon creative, capable, confident, democratic allies to establish conditions of stability and security. We want to work with aligned countries that want to restore their former greatness. over the long term, it is more than plausible that within a few decades at the latest, certain NATO members will become majority non-European. As such, it is an open question whether they will view their place in the world or their alliance with the United States in the same way as those who signed the NATO Charter. A broad policy for Europe should prioritize re-establishing conditions of stability within Europe and strategic stability with Russia, enabling Europe to stand on its own feet and operate as a group of aligned sovereign nations, including by taking primary responsibility for its own defense without being dominated by any adversarial power, cultivating resistance to Europe's current trajectory within European nations, so cultivating fascism, opening European markets to US goods and services, and ensuring fair treatment of US workers and businesses, building up the healthy nations of Central, Eastern, and Southern Europe through commercial ties, weapons sales, political collaboration, and cultural and educational exchanges, ending the perception and preventing the reality of NATO as a perpetually expanding alliance, and encouraging Europe to take action to combat mercantilist overcapacity, technological theft, cyber espionage, and other hostile economic practices. I have something to show here, by the way. ABC article. Kremlin praises Donald Trump's national security strategy. In short, the Kremlin has praised US President Donald Trump's new national security strategy, saying it is largely in line with Russia's views. The Kremlin spokesman said calling for US cooperation with Moscow on strategic stability issues in the step. The strategy says the US should revive the 19th century Monroe Doctrine, which declared the Western Hemisphere to be Russian influence. The strategy signed by Mr. Trump also warns that Europe faces civilizational erosion. Yeah. For US interest in negotiating an end to the war in Ukraine. Crap. We will just continue this. Encouraging Europe to say, oh yeah, already got that. D. The Middle East. Shift burdens, build peace. For half a century at least, American foreign policy has prioritized the Middle East above all other regions. The reasons are obvious. The Middle East was for decades the world's most important supplier of energy, was a prime theater of superpower competition, and was rife with conflict that threatened to spill into the wider world and even to our shores. Today, at least two of those dynamics no longer hold. Energy supplies have diversified greatly, with the United States once again a net energy exporter. Superpower competition has given way to great power jockeying, in which the United States retains the most enviable position, reinforced by President Trump's successful revitalization of our alliances in the Gulf with other Arab partners and with Israel. Conflict remains the Middle East's most troublesome dynamic. I wonder who's causing that. Wonder who's causing that. Hmm. Nah, it couldn't be the only country that's like an oil out. there is today less to this problem than headlines might lead one to believe. Iran, the region's chief destabilizing force. It's not Iran. Oh my god. Has been greatly weakened by Israeli action since October 7, 2023. No, when President Trump's June 2025 Operation Midnight Hammer, which significantly degraded Iran's nuclear program. It did fucking nothing. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict remains thorny, but thanks to the ceasefire, what fucking ceasefire? They're still murdering them, and release of hostages President Trump negotiated. Progress toward a more permanent peace has been made. Hamas's chief backers have been weakened or stepped away. Syria remains a potential problem, with American, Arab, Israeli, and Turkish support may stabilize and reassume its rightful place as an integral positive player in the region. As this administration rescinds or eases restrictive energy policies and American energy production ramps up, America's historic reason for focusing on the Middle East will recede. Instead, the region will increasingly become a source and destination of international investment, and in industries well beyond oil and gas, including nuclear energy, AI, and defense technologies. We can also work with Middle East partners to advance other economic interests, securing supply chains, bolstering opportunities to develop friendly, open markets in other parts of the world, such as Africa. Middle East partners are demonstrating their commitment to combating radicalism. A trend-aligned American policy should continue to encourage, but doing so will require dropping America's misguided experiment with hectoring these nations, especially the Gulf monarchies, into abandoning their traditions and historic forms of government. We should encourage and applaud reform when and where it emerges organically, without trying to impose it from without. The key to successful relations with the Middle East is accepting the region, its leaders, and its nations as they are, while working together on areas of common interest. America will always have core interests in ensuring that Gulf energy supplies do not fall into the hands of an outright enemy, that the Strait of Hormuz remain open, that the Red Sea remain navigable, that the region not be an incubator or exporter of terror against American interests or the American homeland, and that Israel remain secure. They are threatening everybody with nukes. I just hope that people understand that fact. They are threatening everybody with nuclear annihilation. Israel, not America. America is also being threatened. They have literally spoken about nuking European and American cities if they get destroyed. They are threatening us. They are threatening us to control us. And this is not some anti-Semitic thing. Any Jew who is against this is my friend, is my ally. I will not sit here and just continue to see the shit just get further and further and further out of hand, because it is quite literally an existential threat to the entire world. Israel is an existential threat to the world. We can and must address this threat logically and militarily without decades of fruitless nation-building wars. We also have a clear interest in expanding the Abraham Accords to more nations in the region and to other countries of the world. No, fuck Israel. days in which the Middle East dominated American foreign policy in both long-term planning and day-to-day execution are thankfully over. Not because the Middle East no longer matters, but because it is no longer the constant irritant and potential source of imminent catastrophe that it once was. It still fucking is. Because Israel does not give a fuck and they want to fucking build their temple. Watch that. Yeah. It is rather emerging as a place of partnership, friendship, and investment. A trend that should be welcomed and encouraged. In fact, President Trump's ability to unite the Arab world at Sharm el-Sheikh in pursuit of peace and normalization will allow the United States to finally prioritize American interests. Africa. For far too long, American policy in Africa has focused on providing and later on spreading liberal ideology. The United States should instead look to partner with select countries to ameliorate conflict, foster mutually beneficial trade relationships, and transition from a foreign aid paradigm to an investment and growth paradigm capable of harnessing Africa's abundant natural resources and latent economic potential. Go, Ibrahim Traore. Continue your great revolution. Free Africa. Unite Africa. Opportunities for engagement could include negotiating settlements to ongoing conflicts, e.g., DRC, Rwanda, Sudan, and new ones, e.g., Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia, as well as action to amend our approach to aid and investment, e.g., the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act. And we must remain wary of resurgent Islamist terrorist activity in parts of Africa while avoiding any long-term American presence or commitments. The United States should transition from an aid-focused relationship with Africa to a trade and investment-focused relationship, favoring partnerships with capable and reliable states committed to opening their markets to U.S. goods and services. An immediate area for U.S. investment in Africa, with prospects for a good return on investment include the energy sector and critical mineral developments. Development of U.S.-backed nuclear energy, liquid petroleum gas, and liquefied natural gas technologies can generate profits for U.S. businesses, help us in the competition for critical minerals and other resources. Done. Really, if we just have a quick browse through this, Africa's like hardly anything, I suppose, like just kind of getting rid of foreign aid and going for a little bit of neo-colonial exploitation. The Middle East is, there's never going to be peace as long as Israel exists. It's not going to happen. They want to expand their borders. They want to kill, bomb, bomb, bomb. Nothing is going to. There's going to be no lasting peace and unity in the Middle East while Israel still exists. It's really that simple. Europe, a lot of culture war crap, like an awful lot of cultural war crap, supporting far right parties, want to kick out brown people. And then trying to like improve relations with Russia. The running theory is that this is to try and pull them away from China, which I don't think is going to happen. Then we have Asia Pacific. We need to stay the fuck out of it. Like I will tell any Aussie that we need to stay the fuck out of it. We need to focus on our own workers. Focus on not on businesses, on our workers. And don't expect the government to do that. It is really that simple. Don't expect the government to do that. That's naive. That's dumb. Can't expect the government to do that. We have to do it ourselves. But we as Australian workers have to work in our own interests. We cannot expect the government to do that for us because the government fundamentally works for the interests of the rich. So, and obviously, like all the stuff they're trying to. And then bringing back the Monroe Doctrine, that is concerning. That is concerning. That means that they are going to become more violent in the Americas. So I hope that Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba, and any other Latin American peoples who want to rise up and try to take control of their own materials, good luck. Good luck. That's all I will say, because it's like they are about to become a lot more violent and intimidating. They're going backwards a bit. That's for sure. So yeah, we've got all that, and yeah. Okay. All right. That is that one done for tonight. I just thought I would go through that, go through this strategy. Now, what it means for Australia is our continued subjugation as a people. Continued subjugation under the American Empire. Our sovereignty is elusive. And this will become more clear as I work through. Obviously, still have the reading stream tomorrow. Continuing Lenin's Imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism. But there will be other books. The next book to read will be Clinton Fernandez's Sub-Imperial Power, Australia in the International Arena. Now, and this will certainly be one that will begin to piece together things here, and we need to free ourselves. We need to free ourselves. We cannot continue to tolerate this subjugation. We cannot consider to call ourselves like what patriot chooses to remain consciously complicit or unconsciously complicit in our subjugation. And that's the big thing. And that is the distinction here between Australia first, as it were, and Australians first. Australian workers first, because there is a difference. And I'll tell you what, that difference is diametrical. It is diametrically opposed. There is no reconciling those. Either one comes out on top, that of the state and of the ruling class, or that of the people. And that is the decision that we have to make at the end of the day. Whether to put aside the hate, whether to put aside the division among the working people of this country and take power for ourselves and take our destiny into our own hands, or we continue to divide ourselves and let them conquer us, and let ourselves continue to be subjugated under the foot of Britain and America, under the foot of the Anglo-American Empire. They have their boot on our necks. And we are the only ones who can realize that fact and take it off. Kick it off. that is our decision to make at the end of the day. So really that's is going to be our decision to make, and I just hope that we make the right. So tomorrow I will back, of course, for the regular reading stream. I just wanted to go through this tonight and air a few things. So tomorrow I will, of course, be reading Lenin's Imperialism by State of Capitalism. So until next time, see you guys tomorrow or next stream. Have a good morning or night, wherever you are. See you guys next time. Okay.